There I am. All right.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you, buddy?
I know, right? The blessings of this is the new age here.
It's totally not comfortable.
I know we're just making do kind of. It's funny because when I used to do this podcast a year ago, or actually I guess it was a couple years ago when we first started, it was all done on phone call. So I used to hook up
Oh, wow.
a phone and I'd plug it into a mixer and we'd run it back through and do it. I mean, in a way, it's nice. I can see everybody and it's a little bit more homey. But obviously, that was just a
Yeah.
workaround if we were doing it on a call. It's always better to be in person if you can be.
Oh, for sure. I agree. The phone call stuff it's cool. I get it, but it's still kind of weird because you're just talking into a phone and it's kind of weird to make any kind of connection with the interviewer.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. It just it made it's weird because I feel like we're all getting more used to it. Because one of the things I think has helped is I use Zoom for friend calls too. Like I feel like everything I do is on
yeah,
Zoom. It's helped a little bit, but it
everything.
still is
Yeah.
not the same.
And FaceTime. I'm using Zoom and FaceTime more than I ever did in my life.
Uh,
Like, it's so
more than
fun
you ever
for me.
wanted to.
Yeah, probably more than I ever wanted to, but I guess there's, it's so funny. Times have a way of making you change. Even if you don't want to change, you sometimes don't have a choice. And up until now, coronavirus, we had a choice, but
Mhm.
now it's like you have to do everything live streaming via Zoom, FaceTime. It's so weird to write like that. And because I've been doing a lot of co-writing, and a lot of it's on Zoom or FaceTime, and it's like, man, it just is so weird.
Yeah, how does that work now? That must be a unique challenge.
Oh, it's worse than anything.
Because do you just focus on the
Co-writing,
lyrics then, or do you actually try to write the music together, performing
no,
together over Zoom?
well, I mean, as far as writing music to it, I mean, I guess when you're writing songs, um, it just uh, the music comes out anyway, but it's so weird to not be in the same room as far as writing, because it's strange co-writing anyway, because it's just kind of awkward. You're putting your feelings out on your shoulder like that, and but as far as the Zoom thing, it makes it even worse because you can't even connect on physically in the same room. You can't get any kind of a vibe and an atmosphere with them because everybody's in three different atmospheres or two different atmospheres, however you're writing. So it's very strange. So, but I mean, it's working. I mean, once you get used to it, and if you know the person, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that's
Makes it
another
easy.
theme I've been hearing is it's not too bad if you know the person because you already have that
Yeah.
rapport. You can already kind of be like,
Mhm.
okay, we've done certain things together. It's nice, but I think it's sometimes a little bit harder if you don't know them yet. Uh,
Yeah, for
and so
sure.
building that rapport, I think on the first basis is crazy. But are you still in Nashville then, or where do you find yourself today?
I'm in Nashville. We haven't left yet. My wife works here as a nurse at one of the hospitals in Hermitage, and so we've been here about 10. It'll be 10 years this year. So trust me. As soon as all this came about, I wanted to run straight for the hills, go back to West Virginia, and just hide. But just stay away from people.
Yeah.
Anything negative. And well, it just seems like there's more people here. It's just because there we're spread out. You still have to social distance. It's just easier there.
Yeah.
So I think that's the problem. I think it's knowing that if I was there, it's almost technically not like social distancing because it would just be the normal day-to-day life. But
Yeah.
whatever. We're here. We're getting through it. They've got a vaccine. Hopefully it's working and not killing off the population. We're trying to kill off the virus. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, hopefully it's a positive thing. And, in the next 6 months to a year, we'll see some major changes in that. I hope.
Yeah.
I think everybody's tired, man. Like mentally, physically, I mean, emotionally, we're just tired of. I mean, life. We weren't built for this, Well, our lives would just go and go and go and do and do and do, and then all of a sudden, you just kind of have to take a breather and that breather's turning into a lot longer of an amount of time than what we also, expected.
Yeah.
And so we're just all getting wore out on it.
Oh, that's for sure.
It's hard to not be complacent, to follow in complacency like that. And I'm always on my wife. I know she does it, but it's like I'm always at least once a week saying, honey, don't get complacent. Don't get numb to it. Suit up. Put the gloves on, put the mask on, do everything that you got to do to prevent yourself from getting sick, or because you don't want your spouse to get sick. I already had it. I was
really?
very lucky. So, yeah. I'm just talking along here. Good morning. I should have drank some
great.
coffee this morning. I'm just chatting away.
I love coffee.
Oh, I do too, but I drink a whole pot by myself. A little pot.
That's how I do it too. Don't worry.
Spread it out.
I'm on a rare break. I usually take a break at least for an hour in the day where I don't drink coffee. I'm in the post-morning coffee sessions.
Oh man, yeah.
But yeah, awesome. I mean, how is it then living in Nashville? Because when I think of Nashville, I think of Nashville as it was, of course, right? Like music capital. Yeah. It's such a live city, like music all day, every day. You walk around vibrant. What's it like today, especially for musicians? Because it's such a musician place.
I really feel sorry. I feel more sorry for bass players and drummers right now than I do the singer songwriter or the artist type that needs a guitar player or whatever, because we're allowed to do duos right now. And some of the places are big enough and they sell enough. They're big enough to put their 50%. They can afford to put a band in there at their 50% capacity. I'm not. I play one full band show downtown at Tin Roof on Thursdays when we're in town. And if we've only played one time full band in there, and that was New Year's, and it was still awkward, but it's really weird. I mean, it's odd going downtown. I mean, there's people coming back. We're getting the tourists. But at the same time, everything's quieter. And then, of course, the bombing on Christmas Day shut 2nd Avenue down. So, I mean, basically the only businesses open on 2nd Avenue is the Distillery, Doc Holiday's, and Big Shots, and a tattoo parlor up the street. But that's it. That whole avenue from Broadway up is shut down.
Wow, what a change.
So that's it's so weird right now. Nashville's just, you're right, man. It's like, it's a whole different ball game right now. I mean, if you moved to town in the last year and a half, you hopefully you had enough connections to keep you playing, because if you didn't, it'd be tough. It'd be real tough. I wouldn't want to be moving to town right now as a musician, not even as a singer songwriter, unless I had my daddy's money or something.
Well, you can do whatever you want in that case.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter, But I wouldn't want to come here on my own dime right now. It'd be tough. You'd have to get a job, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's always it seems like the path in a lot of time. But it sounds like you've been making the most of things. I mean, really focusing on writing. Yeah. I know you just had a new album out, so it seems like a productive time for you, right?
I mean, as far as, it's been really nice to not have to concentrate on cover music downtown, so that's been pretty cool. It's starting to pick up more, but honestly, I've talked about this before, the first 6 months or so, really the first 3 to 4 months, there was nothing positive coming out of me to want to write. It was very, it was all negative, and anything that I even attempted to write was dark and sad, and it was just like, I'm not gonna sit in my house and just write songs that are sad and depressing. That'll wear on you mentally. So I was like, I just didn't write. I just took a breather, and then I had and then once I think we got like 4 or 5 months into it, I started writing more with people on the Zoom or FaceTime, or even in person. You start breaking rules, and I hate to say that, but you do start breaking rules, because you just get to that point where it's like, all right, man, we're 5 and 6 months into this. If they don't have it and I don't feel sick and they don't feel uncomfortable, you know what? Let's go write a song.
Yeah.
Let's just quit avoiding people. We don't have to get in big crowds, but we can go write a song. And so just started doing that. And then, like I said, I ended up with it in real early November, late October is when I got it. But I was completely asymptomatic. So it's a very hard thing to accept because of that. I think people's struggling with it, people that got it and was like, this wasn't nothing. Well, it might be nothing for you and it might be nothing for me, but I've never known anybody in my life until now be hospitalized for things like this until, so it's real, it's there, and it's just affecting certain people. And, I hate to say it, it's just it's that demographic of people that are, older and sick, a little sicklier, a little less able to fight things off. And that's really rough. But I really get upset when people call it the flu. It drives me crazy. So I'm like, no, dude, anybody in the hospital with the flu? Anybody in the hospital that's died with the flu? I don't. I know people that's dying with this, that's sick with it. It might be the same type of people, but it's way more contagious and it's affecting them way more. So you can't call it the flu.
Yeah.
You can call it what you want, but you can't call it the flu, darn it.
Yeah. Well, did you lose any of your taste too? Because I had, so what's so weird about COVID to me was I have a friend who was pretty much asymptomatic, but lost all taste for a month. My aunt had it. She was down for a long time. Then I had a cousin get it. He didn't have that bad. So it's just the variability is crazy. But did you lose your taste or anything like that? Or was it?
I swear to you, Leland, I lost nothing. I had
good.
No fever. I would have never known I had it
Good.
if it wouldn't have been for the girl that opened for us at 3rd and Lindsley on the 28th of October. She left, that weekend the day before she flew home, she was feeling sick. And when she got home to LA, she tested positive. And so management called and said, hey, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh man. And so, but I was only like 3 or 4 days into it. So I was freaking out, of course. And I'm like, well, when am I going to get sick? When am I going to get sick? And it turns out, the worst part is it had been like, that was a Wednesday. I didn't find out until the following Tuesday. And I'd went home to West Virginia and visited my father-in-law just for the night. Shane, my guitar player, and I, we had a show up there and we played a private party. And I never passed it on to Shane. I never passed it on to my father-in-law, my wife even. I mean, I didn't quarantine those first 5 days because I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And nobody got sick in the management department. Nobody got sick. My father-in-law didn't. My wife didn't. I was the only guy with it. And I was really frustrated. It's like, man, there's no way I got it. That's a false positive. So like 5 days even further into it, I took another test at a walk-in clinic and it came back 24 hours positive also. And I was like, that's 2 different tests or 2 different outfits. I probably have it, but I don't know, man. It just never, thank God. I mean, but I was trying to be preventative, as soon as this all hit, I've really upped my immune system boosting stuff, zinc and vitamin C's and D's. And, I started a everyday vitamin and I've really stuck to a good agenda of trying to really pump it up. But I always have been aware of the immune system, but, I've just been very aware now. So hopefully that might be what it did. Maybe I just attacked it before it ever got to me and was able to beat it up. I don't know. I hope I never get it again, just for the mere mentality of thinking I'm going to die as soon as I know I have it. That's what it does.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it was nothing for you, or you were
absolutely. Yeah, I'm very blessed. I will take that. So my parents, they just got over it. My dad had a really rough go with it. He's 66 years old and has a touch of COPD, and he spent 2 nights in the hospital last week because it caused a blood clot on his lung. And so they had to, but he's much better. He got out 2 days later. He's lucky. I've been very lucky with parents that are healthy, and I think it's because we grew up poor, and so we didn't our immune systems had to work because we weren't going to go to the hospital, you know.
Well,
I don't know.
So you grew up in West Virginia then, huh?
Yeah, all my life till I was 30.
Wow. So what was that like? And how did that inspire you as a musician? Because I'm sure that had to have, a big impact on you.
I grew up in gospel music, a lot of gospel music and hill country, bluegrass style, real old style country stuff. That's what my family did. And then I wasn't allowed to listen to anything but gospel in my house. My parents, we went to church 3 times a week, and whether we needed to or not. And Friday night, if there was a youth revival, we were there. So we didn't listen to anything but gospel in my house. And then I didn't catch on to, I heard some country music, probably from my grandparents, especially on my mom's side, her family. They listened to country music and, some rock, classic rock stuff. And that's where I learned about Hank Jr., Merle Haggard, Leonard Skinner, the Allman Brothers, all that stuff came from my mom's side of the family as far as learning about it. And then, of course, going to high school. I went to church school until my freshman year in high school. So, I wasn't exposed to anything hardly. It wasn't even an intentional sheltering. They didn't mean to do it. It just happened that way because we were just church going folks. And that's just the way we were allowed to run and rip and tear in the woods. We did whatever we wanted on the farm, but it was just, as long as we were in church 3 times a week, that's all that mattered. But I wouldn't take my raising for anything. I wouldn't trade it for nothing. They did what, we had a good life. We was very family oriented. We're very, blood is definitely thicker than water in our family. And I'm proud of that. And I hold that dear. So, I can't knock the way I was raised. It didn't, music didn't come out of me until later as far as what I wanted to write. I was probably in my 20s before I really started writing anything that made sense to that pertained to my life. So I think, but a big inspiration was gospel music, and then country, and then a little Southern rock. And, it ventures into other stuff, but it always comes back to that country stuff. And
so
I think
what was the gospel music like? Can you, because I'm not as familiar with gospel music, just because for me,
okay.
It's something I grew up with.
Well, of course, you got your hymns that the church sings together, but then there was praise and worship, music where, you would do more contemporary style music behind it and melodies. And then I got big into what they call Southern gospel music, which is kind of like a quartet style. And it would be like the Cathedral Quartet, the Kingsmen, the Palmetto State. There's so many, the Cathedrals. Then there was Families, the Hoppers, the Happy Goodmans, the Greens. There was so many. Well, of course, you got Bill and Glory, Bill Gaither. I don't know if you've ever heard of him or not. He's pretty popular. And no, he's pretty popular. I'm surprised you don't know who he is.
I'll have to see. Part of the thing I love about talking about people's inspirations is I get to learn so much about who I should be listening to.
I hear you. Yeah.
Like that. Yeah. I'll go look and listen for sure.
It probably gave me a lot of my chops, knowing how you didn't have to be taught to do anything. Like when I was a kid, I would just try to mimic what they were doing. And so it ended up teaching me, it was kind of neat because they do gospel singers, especially when you get into that quartet realm, they do really neat, cool vocal tricks to, they work the mic, there's just so many different things. And that really, I think that gave me a lot of good, education, as far as how to do things and how to work that mic and how not to be right against the mic when you're singing real loud, know how to back off, and really taught me about, the ambiances and stuff of how to use that. So, but you should look up a band, Charles Johnson and the Revivers. They were a black gospel group, and man, do you know who Cody Johnson is at all? Or
no, you're opening up a whole world for me.
Okay, Cody Johnson's he's a country singer out of Texas. He's big time. He just doesn't have a big time record deal, but he can sell out like the Bridgestone Arena in Nashville. but he there's a song on there, I Can't Even Walk Without You Holding My Hand. It's talking about Jesus, you know. And but the Charles Johnson and the Revivers, they did it originally way back, probably in the mid 90s, early to mid 90s, and it was just so soulful and gospel. Like music like that would get me, like when you get into that deep black gospel or the real soulful. And then I realized, okay, it's the blues. I love the blues, and the blues connects to country, and it all like I've realized that I think that my main inspiration is probably black gospel or like that really deep Southern, and it just branched into the other. To me, that's where all like country and like some of your Southern rock music, that's where blues, it all came from that same, it all came from the old timers. I mean, I hate to say it, but in the fields, and they were singing, I mean, they were singing old gospel songs and they were putting their soul into it. And I think that's where a lot of our three chord and the truth music comes from. I dig it, you know. I think that's
Yeah, I
where
love
I
the
got it.
expression three chords and the truth. I like that.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Like I think that's really that's all a person needs. You know, you're just telling your life story or telling someone else's life story. You just need a small melody to get it out there. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's a way to click. Man, Merle Haggard had it down. He knew how to really write a lyric to go with the music. He knew how to make that just match up so strong that it provided the actual emotion you didn't even know you were about to feel. You know, it just showed up because of how he did that. You know, I just think that there's a true art to it.
Yeah.
You don't need 300 chords and 10 different melody lines in a song. You know, you just need the right lyrics to match
Yeah.
the melody.
And I think so much of good country too is really about the underlying story. Cause I mean, and then obviously the soul that you put into it, it comes on the back of that. So that makes a ton of sense. Did you grow up then performing in like a gospel choir, or when was it that obviously it was in your 20s that you started performing your own stuff, but when was it that you really started engaging with music and getting sort of your sound down?
Probably 12 to 14 is when I started taking solos. But I mean, I was doing church choir stuff, you know, prior to that, and youth choir stuff. But actually doing solos and doing my own thing and trying to, you know, feel out what I liked, what was right for me in the gospel world was probably 12 to 14. And then by the time I was 15, 16, there was some local quartets and trios and stuff. So I'd get involved in those and do singing with those cats. And then I think by the time I was 18, all that stuff was just starting to fade away around there. Wasn't a whole lot of it going on. And I decided that I didn't want such a high pitched voice. So I started smoking cigarettes really heavy. I like to smoke cigarettes anyway, but I really started at 18. And one of the main reasons was to get like a lower range in my voice. That was really some true intentions on it. So I smoked cigarettes until I was 36. So I quit. It'll be 4 years this July. Thank God I got away from those. But anyway, yeah, and then probably a different crowd I started running with. It got me around the campfires, you know, drinking beers and just hanging out on Friday and Saturday night. And the next thing you know, well, George plays the guitar. How come you never play your guitar? Blah, blah, blah. Well, I'll bring it out, you know, whatever. Then you start sitting around the fire and you play it, and you do that for like a year or two. Then I met my wife, well, a few years. And then I met my wife when I was 23, 24. And she was just always like, George, you're better than just sitting around a campfire. Why aren't you trying to do something with it? Why don't we chase that? You know, do what you want to do. You're good enough to try. And I was like, well, all right. I mean, we'll start trying. I was working full time. And then on the weekends, I'd take a bar gig, you know, or whatever, and play a handful of songs and, you know, or show up to open mic nights and stuff. And then started getting into the scene in the area as far as playing. And then I played a lot of covers where I come from. If you have originals, that's great, but you're not going to get them to drink booze with it. And so they don't sell. The bars won't hire you to do your originals usually. Not a whole original sets anyway. But plus I didn't have 3 hours worth of originals. But anyway, so I just kept at it, and it got to the point in West Virginia where I didn't feel like I could do much more. I mean, I was playing every, you know, 4 and 5 nights a week and making a living, but there wasn't a scene, it wasn't, I wasn't writing with, meeting new musicians and new artists. It just wasn't a scene. So I met a guy named Jay Corey, and he introduced me. He had bars that he owned, and I was playing in them, and he just kept, hey man, why don't you do something different here? Why don't you try to move away? And I'm like, where am I going to move? And he's like, Nashville. I'm like, I don't know anybody in Nashville. I don't want to go down there and just, twiddle my thumbs and knock on doors and expect people to let me play. And I'm just not that type of person. He's like, no, man. He's like, well, I know some folks down there. So he introduced me to a guy named Dave Pahanish, who ended up producing all, both the albums that I've released so far, every track. And he's a good friend. He's wrote some big songs, and I stayed in touch with him actually he stayed in touch with me for like a year and a half. And then Emily was finishing up her LP and RN degree in nursing. And as soon as she finished it up, that summer, we started making the move, and we got here in October of 2011. So it's been a wild ride. I wouldn't trade it for nothing, but it's so weird. Like as long as I've been away from home, I still miss it, and it's still home. I think after growing up there for 30 years, you don't really change after that. I think you're pretty much, that's instilled in you. So, but I'd like to live the best of both worlds and have, I do like to travel back and forth a lot, but we're permanently here, but I do like to go home at least. We go home at least a half a dozen times a year. We miss our folks, my folks, our dad. It's a family and friends, well, when you spend that much time, it's hard to walk away from that. You basically walked away from our life, but that's where we'll retire. That's where we'll retire at, we'll go back. So.
And I think that's sort of how life is. I mean, you kind of hit an age when you realize that what sort of shaped you is a lot of where you came from and who you grew up with too. And you can go all types of different new places, but it always kind of sticks with you. And it's important, I think, to keep those threads going,
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I think if we don't keep them going and don't, acknowledge them, then we'll lose touch of where we came from and how we got where we're at. And I just think that, I don't know. I just, it's hard to get them hills out of your blood.
Well, yeah, there's no need to anyway.
Feel safe there. That's what I told him. That's my only refuge in my mind. That's the only place I feel safe.
Yeah. Well, that's great. No, it's great to have that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how would you describe yourself then as an artist? Because clearly, I mean, it's been a large trajectory for you, and you've really honed it all, honed your voice now. I mean, how do you describe yourself to people who are new to you?
I think that I'm country. I don't think you can take that out. It's there's nothing I can do to get rid of that. I think that I'm a soulful country type. I like to think I'm kind of like the Leonard Skinner or like a Hank Jr. type. I like to fall into that range. That's probably how I would describe it, though. More of a soulful country. It's not rock and roll, and it's not blues, and it's always going to be country, I think, but more of a Bo Cephas country, like a real soulful, like like I was saying. I think that's where I'm at. But I also fall into that folk stuff too. I like that folk writing. I love that shit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so as a modern country singer, I mean, you sort of mentioned it too. Like country has such deep, long-lasting roots, across different subgenres like blues and bluegrass.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you, as a modern country singer, view sort of country moving forward? Like, how do you think country's going to sound in 5-10 years, if you had to guess?
I
know it's a tough question, but I'm always thinking about how things are evolving in terms of genres, and country's a fascinating one.
The best thing I could say is I think in 10 years, you're good. Whatever pop radio is doing right now, whatever top 40 is doing, 10 years from now, that's where country will be. Because I feel like that's where we've kind of went the last 3 decades. Seems like we just keep falling into whatever top 40 is doing only about 7 to 10 years later. So I feel like there's some kind of weird something like they're figuring out what makes money, and they're just kind of trying to like keep making sure it cycles back into the country realm so they get money. I think that's where I see it. If not, I don't know. Probably EDM. I mean, we're already running tracks on stage with these artists nowadays in country music, running tracks on stage with country artists. It just doesn't, you'd have never got me to believe that when I was a kid growing up. Like, one day you will hear drum loops and tracks and techno music in your country lyrics. And it's like, what? But whatever makes them work, I guess. I mean, if that's that's what their heart feels as an artist, and they should.
Well, what are your honest thoughts on like Old Town Road then, for instance? Because that was the one that was the real bender, right? That was crazy for people to hear. What were your thoughts on it as a country singer yourself?
I tell you, man, I thought it was weird as soon as Florida Georgia Line come out with Cruise. I thought that's when it got weird. To me, the Old Town Road isn't much different than what we were doing in, when Florida Georgia Line or Sam Hunt and those guys come out. I mean, they come out hard, hitting it hard with those hip hop beats, and all that underlying and production, and you just no real instrumentation, but I mean, it works. It's what's driving, the sales right now. So the Old Town Road, I didn't take it seriously. I would have never guessed that it would have been what it was at the end of the year. Like, I just thought it was kind of a joke at first. Like, all right, this is kind of funny. Billy Ray got on board, and I thought, well, this will be fun, let's give him a little bit of, but man,
I told everybody.
Other people took it serious. It was crazy.
Well, I told everybody when it first came out. I was telling everybody when I was telling my friends about the song, because I found the song and I was like, Old Town Road. And I was telling everyone that it was actually a joke song, because I was convinced that it actually was a joke. And then I found out it wasn't a joke. And then I found out that it wasn't a joke and it was massively successful. So it was this crazy, crazy thing. But it's so fascinating to me because, it's not just country, right? This is happening to every genre. There's like a real genre bending that happens. And I think it's natural, right? You always iterate away and see if what happens. And it's kind of interesting where you're pulling in these audiences of non-country enjoying audiences into country. Yeah. That's what pop is, right? It's pulling people who aren't interested in the genre in. And that's where the bending can sometimes catch. And that really caught.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It caught. I mean, real quick, that cat, like, he can work for the rest of his life off of that song now.
Oh yeah.
What's his name? What's his name? Little. It's not
Lil Nas X. It's not
Lil Nas X. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can't remember names very good. They all get into that same little guy They got a little before everything. I just start getting confused.
I love it. So I would love to go into. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No. I was just thinking, but to me, that's. Country music is like, I think that's where it could be. It could be anything 10 years from now, but I feel like it always cycles. But we'll see.
And as you know, I mean, clearly, I feel like music maps itself to how people want to take it in. Like, and country was always such a live art.
Yeah.
Like the campfire, the Nashville bar, like awesome, soulful live. And then it's interesting when it sees itself maybe try to find its way. You see country on the radio too. And then there's that distinct style. And then you see it kind of come into maybe even a party type music, which is the Old Town Road jump. And it can do it. And I think that's where a lot of the evolution comes into, is when listeners decide they like a genre and they want to take it into other parts of their life.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You're right. That's a good way to look at it. I hadn't thought about it that way, but it really does bring people into listening to it, and then it's kind of neat how they end up falling in love with it and take it back.
But I'd love to hear more about your songwriting process. So is there a typical process that you go through? Because I know your songs are so much from experience. I was just curious how you actually write songs. Is there a way that you go about it? I
think I just start feeling it. Like extracurricular activities possibly help. But sitting around just jamming at night, you know, just kind of getting in that little vibe, just, you know, low lit room, guitar, chilling, thinking of things, and you just start strumming and just different lyrics come, and then next thing you know, you'll strike an idea. And then sometimes, and then I don't even write it. Then I just sit there like, well, I wish I could write that song. That'd be a good one to write. And then I'll hang on to it, and it'll just circle around every so often and get in my head, and I'll think about it. And or it'll be an idea where it's like, it's such a cool idea, like Handful of Hell. That song was such a good idea. I didn't want to ruin it. Like, I didn't want to write it by myself and be like, mediocre. You know, I didn't want to do that. So I kept pitching it to other writers, you know, when I'd go for these co-writes and such. And man, it took them forever to try to figure out how they could get negative, something positive out of that. And I'm like, it's positive. The whole song's positive. Like, I guess I just didn't explain to them where I was coming from with it. And it was coming from Emily, my wife, you know, and it was just how she saved me basically. And I thought that everybody could relate to that, but guess not. Anyway, so I just kept thinking on it, and then certain lines would come to me, and then that would give me more ammo when I would go into the co-writes. I'm like, no, I got some lines, like I got these ideas with it, how I think it should go. And finally, a young guy out of Philadelphia, he'd lived here in town for, you know, a few months. His name was Chris Paterno, and I went and wrote with him, and we had a pretty good write the first time. So I thought, well, you know what? He's willing to try. So next write, I pitched that at him, and we wrote it that day. And I just was, I mean, I think certain songs, they either come to you or you fight for them and you get them. But co-writing with me is more, I like to co-write. I think the inspiration from someone else's thinking process on the same subject, how they would do it, really can change a song from being a good song to a great song. Because just, I mean, I think one-dimensionally. I mean, most of these cats coming into town now, they've trained their brains to think 3D and like 4D, you know, so they think different ways, and it's really fun to like take ideas of those guys. But I get inspiration from my wife a lot. I don't know, I do a lot of love songwriting, or heartache songwriting. And not that she's caused me heartaches, but it's the thought of the heartache, you know, that could come with losing my wife. And but you know, all the love stuff, I think she's the main inspiration for that nonsense. But my drinking songs, you know, I'm a drinker, always was. My 20s was real hell on me, and early into my 30s, I've learned to put it down, but for the most part, and control it. But I drank real heavy, you know, a lot, and for the first probably 10, 15 years of adulthood. So, and I put myself through a lot of crazy situations and, you know, bad times. I mean, the songs I've written to Emily are songs that I have felt because I was messing up, you know. So there was a few like that. So anyway, but I think my inspiration just comes from, like you said, it's life experiences and, you know, just the right vibe and the atmosphere. And you come up with ideas and melodies, and then co-writes. If you got something like that to go into a co-write, there's some really, really talented songwriters in this town. And I think you're a fool to sit here and be selfish and try to write every song by yourself. I think you're an idiot. I think you're so stupid. What are you doing? Like, you don't even need, what did you come to town for? Yeah. I mean, that's, Tyler Childers says it best. He doesn't need to be here to write songs. It doesn't make sense for him. He doesn't draw any inspiration from here. That's not what he does. Mm-hmm. So there was no need for him to ever come here to try to, you know, get it rolling. He could do it where he was at. He was writing the better songs where he was at. He didn't need help. Tyler Childers is a true talent. You know, I mean, he paints a picture. He's very, very talented songwriter. That's probably one of my favorite guys, you know, that's playing right now. I mean, as far as talent goes, that guy, he probably sold most of his soul to the devil, not just a piece. That's how I feel. I think he's great, man. So, you know, just like Stapleton, you know. Stapleton doesn't, man, he don't halfway do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
He went all the way out on every song. Like he just throws it all out there. And I think a, he's just bad. Like he's a bad dude. It's just those kind of cats. But you know, they're inspiration, I think. Guys that are writing right now inspire other folks, and I see it all the time. That's why you get some of the same sounding songs. We inspire each other. I mean, I might not inspire them, but they inspire me. But I mean, like, you know, they make me want to write better songs and write, you know. But I guess, you know, just back to that whole thing. This is a songwriting town, and I think if you come here and try to write all the songs that you think of by yourself, especially as an artist, I think you're really dropping the ball. And like, why did you come to town? I think that you're a fool not to take advantage of all the songwriting here and like getting those co-writes. It teaches you to write a better song. If you, you know, some of these guys have been here doing it, you know, 30 plus years. They've been doing it because they know how to do it, and they've crafted, or they've, you know, finessed their craft. And it's like, you need to, my biggest thing is taking all the time I can to pay attention to that and try to learn from that. And the inspiration will always be there for a song. It's just, to me, it's how well can the song be written? Like how good are you at writing that inspiration on? And I just think that certain ideas and certain things, you better take it to somebody. I think you better take it to somebody else, or at least on my end. I shouldn't say that, I shouldn't vouch for anybody else. On my end, I feel there's a lot of great songwriters, and it's stupid for me to think that I can write every idea by myself better than writing with some other guys, you know?
Yeah. Well, and any good community does that, right? It props you up, it inspires you, it adds new things to it. And I think a lot of times, at least in my creative process as well, not that I'm a musician like you in that regard, but like whenever you're doing anything creative, I think it always helps too to just kind of present it to people and explain it to people and show it to people, especially people that know what you're trying to do and are so good at it, because they can add a lot to it. Like, you know, you share your story with people. It's even when you release a song too, you share your story with people, and then people get to connect with that story in any number of ways, right?
Absolutely.
Your specific experience may not be the same experience as them, but the feeling that you put across and or the theme that you put across might resonate strongly and bring up some other thought in someone else as well. Same idea, but you're just doing it pre-release almost, and that's why I think it's really smart. Collaboration's always smart.
I agree. I think it's great. I think collaboration's always smart.
So can you tell me more about Out All Nighter? Because I know it's your most recent release. I mean, what went into that, and what are some of the stories that do you have any favorite stories from Out All Nighter?
I mean, I don't know. I think it just all came from just knowing that I'm an out all night kind of guy. And I think that line, it's in 2 songs in the album. It's obviously it's on Handful of Hell, but then it's also on a song that I didn't write on Have a Good Time. And and it says, I'll be out all night. And so I was like, man, that's kind of cool how it all ended up connecting, even though I didn't write the one, but it all connected. And everything, I felt like everything connected that way. And I just was like, I'm an out all nighter type guy. Like, I've lived that life. Like, I'm good with that. I'm okay with speaking that. So I'll say that. And then, but just all those songs, some of them were, oh my God, man, some of those songs are 10 years old. Like Have a Good Time, Dave Patanish wrote that 10 years ago, and it's just stuck with me. Like, I've always wanted to record that song, and finally I got to. But, you know, and then like Handful of Hell, that was floating around in my head since probably 2014, 2015, and it didn't get wrote until, you know, 2018 or whatever. But I mean, and then Misery of Gin, I just wanted to do a cover of Hag. I always want to like put a cover song on there, and I didn't feel like anybody covered that too much. So that was one that people usually stay away from, or not stay away from, but then you don't hear it a lot. So I just think that they're all connected, and that's why it all became an out all nighter type thing. There's redemption in there, and then there's still the whole living the life. And I mean, even if you've been redeemed, you can still be out all night.
Love it. So what about Fire or Flame? What was the story behind that one? I found that song really interesting as well.
I thought about that idea for a while, and I just like the idea of like a relationship. Am I going to be here? Like I just felt like a fire is a long-standing thing, and little flames that build the fire, they go away, they go out, they're just there. And I just felt like that was a really cool point of view to look at a relationship. Am I going to be here? Like he was in love with her, but and it could have been the other way around. I mean, you can be in love with someone and you're just not sure if they're in love with you back, kind of type thing. And I brought the thought to Dave, and it just fell out. That one went quick. Like I was like, man, this is cool, because I really loved the melody that we had in our head on it, or what I was starting with, and then the idea was there, and so I think it was like an hour and a half, 2 hours. It just fell out. It was just like, dang, you don't get those rights usually. Usually you're frying your brain by the time you get done with a verse and a chorus. And all right, can we reschedule another appointment, type thing. But this one was good. But especially Dave and I mean, we've written a lot at this point the last few years, and it's sometimes you get stale when you're writing with the same folks. Just like if you're writing by yourself, you get stale and burn out on it. And I'm not really, can't think of how to paint that picture or whatever, So, you can do that with other co-writers, I guess, if you write with them all the time. But we always still write, even if we don't get another one. It's the company. Dave and I get along. He's really, really, really easy to deal with. So we get along good. It always ends up being good, no matter what.
At the end of the day, it's about a lot about the relationships that you develop. I mean, I think that's where you feel fulfilled in what you do. It might be your audience, it might be the people that you work with, it might be both. And I think that it comes down to people a lot of the time. And that's why it's very cool to hear you talk so collaboratively, especially about the writing process. Is something that you really draw a lot of meaning from working with people that you respect and inspire you, and make you a better singer and make you a better writer. And
absolutely,
and it's so fun to watch you describe that process, because clearly you really love it. And clearly that's why how you tap into that deep, soulful sound in your music too. It clearly comes from there.
It has to be the only way, I guess. I don't know. I mean, if not, I guess I would probably just dry up and be done with it if I didn't have other people involved, and not, like you're saying, like collaborating, even just playing the music, not even writing. Even if I'm just playing, like I would much rather play with the band or with another, guitar picker or whatever, than just play a show by myself. It's way more fun, just to add so much, and you feed off of one another. So I think that's what co-writing is about, feeding off each other. And it's good to lock into someone else's vibe and emotion, I think. I mean, how else are you going to have any empathy, or how do you feel empathetic to people if you can't click, with what they're feeling? And I think that this songwriting helps you do that more than anything, just about, because you're both putting really raw thoughts out there there's not much of a filter. Like you kind of have to be each other's filter. So you kind of don't really, once you put it out there, it's out there. You have to trust each other not to like, I mean, so it's kind of it does connect people. You're right. It's kind of cool. I guess I hadn't really even thought of it that way until you made me aware of that.
Well, I mean, it's cool. Also just, I think, music has a unique power of opening us up to ideas and to stories that might otherwise be really difficult to discuss or share. That was sort of the theme, like between like why we started looking at like social issues in songs as well, was the idea that like there are people sharing some really serious issues and people are engaging with it and supporting it. And it's sort of an easier way, rather than having like a debate or like that can sometimes be like intense or very one-sided.
Right.
More just you can maybe help people explore different stories and empathize with them, whether it be lost love or feeling depressed, or the dealing with inequities in race or whatever it might be. There's music has a unique way of driving that empathy, and clearly you use that for the benefit of your songs as well.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, I
but it
think that you
requires an
do.
openness from you, clearly. I mean, not just with your
Oh yeah,
songwriter, it starts there, but
right. The guy listening has to be open to, but you're right. It does make people more aware of certain situations that they might not have been aware of. If they didn't hear it in a song, and it might make them, have feelings towards that, even negative or positive. So
yeah.
it's kind of cool. Yeah.
So can you tell me about West Virginia Moon? Because
Uh,
it's my understanding now that that's actually going to be on television, huh?
yeah. I'm gonna be on TV. Um,
Told you, Mom.
yeah, my brother. This is so funny because my brother and my father, they're both hunters, fishers, trappers. They live the lifestyle, and I mean, I can do that stuff, but it wasn't. I wanted to pick up a guitar. I wanted to play music.
Mhm.
So but my brother, when all this came about, he was like, it doesn't make any sense. He's like, you pretty much shunned the outdoor life. He's like, and now you're going to be on an outdoor type TV show with a song on it. He's like, it just doesn't make sense. And I was like, I know. I was like, but I know you're jealous. So I have to give him grief every time I talk to him. Like, hey, I'm making it on TV for fishing. But no, the guy that Curtis Fleming, the guy that owns that show, or the rights to it or whatever, he's from my county where I'm from, and we got hooked up through mutual friends and stuff, and he's just been real gracious, really cool. They were doing that shoot down there on the New River Gorge, and I was coming through to stay. I was coming up to West Virginia, so I just stopped in that night. I didn't get to go fishing with them, but which was okay because I've never been fly fishing. So I would have looked very awkward probably on TV if they'd have put a fly rod in my hand. And anyway, so we just stopped in and said hey, played some songs, and that was really cool. But I think West Virginia Moon came from, I mean, obviously growing up there, but the co-writer I had, Dave Oakleaf, on that. Me and him were just hanging out one day, and we were talking about it, and he had just came back. He came through West Virginia and played a show up there, right around my hometown area, like 40 minutes away. And he was talking about how pretty and beautiful it was. He's like, man, now I know why you think you feel safe there. He's like, I can see why anybody would want to call that home, and would feel safe there, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah. I was like, so then we just got to talking, and it just happened. He was talking about the moon he was talking about how bright the moon was. I think it was just a full moon though that week. But he was talking about how big it was and bright it was and how cool it was to watch it go away around certain turns, big hills cover it. But then he's just always, and so we got to talking, and I thought, well, that could be a cool way to talk about something leading you home or getting you home. And so we wrote it, and I just thought it was a cool little tune about home, and didn't even play it that much. And then I started playing it. Oh my God, we wrote that song in, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, and I didn't start playing it till last year a little bit, and people started liking it. I was like, well, all right, cool. And then Curtis hit us up about it, and I was like, man, I heard that song, West Virginia. I'd like to maybe work that in. And I was like, hey, sure, go right ahead. I'm not going to turn that down. So, but yeah, that's kind of how it came to be. It's just very organic, just happened. I think that's the way everything good happens, though. It's just organically. That's the best way to do things. Get forced stuff.
Well, clearly you're a guy that people like working with, so I'm sure it just kind of happens for you.
probably make them laugh.
Yeah.
Keep that guy around for laughs.
Yeah. Well, it's gonna be on Fly Rod Chronicles, and that's really cool. Do you know when it's gonna air for people to check it out?
I do believe it's February 15th, but I don't know for certain.
Well, we can look it up then anyway. People look it up. Fly Rod Chronicles.
Yeah. And the cool thing is he made a jump from the Outdoor Channel to Discovery Channel this year. So it doubled his audience and stuff. So I was like, awesome. Yeah, this is a good time to get on there then. So
there we go.
Yeah. I'm excited. I think it'll be cool.
So what else do people have to look forward from you?
That's it. That's going to be the highlight of my career, Leland.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously that was the peak. I meant, where do you go after you come down from there?
Well, now we start working our way back down the ladder. So no, I don't know, man. We're actually probably gonna. I'm starting to. I'm writing real heavy again. So as far as co-writing, and I think we're gonna release more. Either we're gonna release 5 to 8 more songs sometime around May, June. So I mean, this streaming world is not about. They're not letting you release an album once every year and a half, 2 years now. Now it's you got to have music. We need more.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, I mean, stuff's picked up as far as my schedule because of that. Because like, oh, I got to pay attention and be writing songs and making sure what we're putting out is what I want to sing the rest of my life too. So that's not always easy in the short amount of time that you got to do it. So if you got any songwriter friends that have big catalogs of really good songs, have them send them over.
That's it. Reach out. You know, you clearly have presented yourself as someone who obviously is a great performer. And you know, I think when you open yourself up to collaboration too, it makes people gravitate towards you. So who the hell knows, man? I hope I'm really excited to see more of the music that comes out of you.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have some fun. I think it'll get good. I think it'll get bad too, but I think it'll get good.
But that's what life's all about, you know. I think one of the beauties too of music is like it teaches you a little bit about just experimentation. You know, you got to try things to figure out what works, and you're gonna fail. You're gonna fall on your face, but those victories are gonna lift you up high enough that no one remembers the fall.
That's you hope that way. I've seen some fellas fall on their face and never bounce back.
I hear you there too. I hear you.
No, I think that that's what's cool about collaborating with other folks too, is other folks might hear something that you can do that you wouldn't normally do. And it's like you saying, stepping out of the box and trying new things. And that's, you know, sometimes you need other people to show you, hey, you don't just box yourself here.
Yeah.
Do this.